Here's a reality most people don't hear about. In 2025 alone, Customs seized 469 illegal firearms and over 40,000 rounds of ammunition. So today, we're talking about how these seizures actually happen, the technology behind it, and why non-intrusive inspection is protecting borders while facilitating trade. And joining me is one of the persons responsible for those operations, Kingsley Henry, Senior Director for Non-Intrusive Inspection and Security Management at Jamaica Customs. Kingsley, I think there's some misunderstanding about what Customs actually does to protect Jamaica's borders. And the reason why I say this is drawing from personal observation. I remember, I believe it was last year, there was a massive gun seizure, and I took to social media and I was going through the comments, and a few of the comments were saying that how comes Customs make these guns come into Jamaica, and it had to be the police who had to go to the port to seize these illegal firearms. Is it that Jamaicans are still unclear that when seizures happen at a lot of these warehouses, it's actually Customs at work?
Well, I think, Nikel, a lot of Jamaicans are still not clear about what we do at Customs. And I think we accept part of the responsibility for the lack of clarity that the Jamaican people have in regards to how we operate. A very long time we would just do the work and we would not promote what we do as an agency. That certainly has changed over the last decade or so. And one of the things that we would say within the agency is that it's not just about revenue collection, and it's not just a Jamaica Customs. Customs administrations across the world generally are known as revenue agencies, but under the leadership of the World Customs Organization, we have seen a transitioning away from that primary focus to placing a lot of emphasis on border protection and trade facilitation, right? So the speed and efficiency with which goods move across the border is a primary concern for Customs, and it's one of our core mandates at Jamaica Customs Agency. And certainly the border protection component is something that we take very seriously at Jamaica Customs. So I know you mentioned the role of technology, but even before we get to technology, it's how an organization such as Jamaica Customs structures itself that indicates what is important to us, right? And in the transition of the Jamaica Customs Agency to an executive agency in 2013, one of the things that was done is a reorganization of the Border Protection Division. So we have a division that is headed by a deputy CEO in charge of border protection, but then there are 5 branches within that division that supports the work. So you have the risk management. We have renamed it and rebranded to the Operational Risk and Targeting branch. We have the Contraband Enforcement branch. We have intelligence, we have investigations, and of course we have non-intrusive inspection and security management, of which I'm the senior director in charge. And so all of those branches work together to make the magic happen. So it's not just about technology, because there's a lot of work that goes on before we even scan or open a piece of cargo or passenger luggage to inspect it. There's intelligence and the risk work that goes on behind the scenes and that support the actual inspection work. So we see ourselves in terms of non-intrusive inspection, similar to the contraband enforcement team, as the operational arm of the Border Protection Division. We are the ones out there doing the inspection, but then that is supported behind the scenes. And after we have these detections, then the investigations branch would continue with the work in terms of their investigations. And so going a long route so that the public can understand how things work. So we have invested a lot in modern scanning technology. And a lot of this investment we have done in partnership with the Port Authority of Jamaica, as far as the seaports are concerned and the public bonded warehouses that support seaport operations. But the investment in technology is one. I think the most important part of the investment for us, certainly, is investment in people, right? So we have expanded, for example, the branch that is responsible for scanning from a branch that had 30-something staff member between all of the operations in Kingston and in Western Jamaica to a branch that has well over 100 team members. But it's not just the number as well, it's the expertise that these team members bring to the work. So you may have a wonderful piece of technology, but if you don't have the expertise that is able to use it effectively, then we would not be seeing the results that we're seeing, right? And so taken together, the organization, the support of the branches, and the use of modern cargo and baggage scanning technology is what helps us at JCA to be as effective as we have been over the last number of years.
And in fact, effective indeed, because we would have seen an increase in terms of the number of seizures. But you'd have mentioned non-intrusive inspection. Those listening and watching may be asking, what is non-intrusive inspection? Kingsley, do you mind?
So for the layman is using, in our case, we rely on X-ray technology and other technologies to be able to see what is in, for example, a shipping container, to see what is in a barrel or in a crate, to see what is in your bag, to see what is in your mail, because we do mail, what is in your parcel that is coming to you from Amazon or wherever you shop, right? Temu or Shein or wherever it is. So we're able to see by scanning those cargo and those packages, we're able to see what is inside. And we scan to confirm that what you have declared to customs
Correct.
is what is in those packages before an officer even have to open it, right? And we scan as well, very importantly, to ensure that there's no contraband in it, whether that contraband be firearms, ammunition, narcotics, or some other item that is either prohibited or restricted. So that is what we do, and for a lot of that is not front facing. So when you come, or your auntie or your mother come to collect the barrels, they are not seeing that part of the customs operations. The part that they're seeing is the one with our frontline officers who is interacting with them and may ask them to open the barrel or the box for further what we call secondary inspection.
All right. Thanks for that clarity, Kingsley. But let's talk numbers a little bit. In 2025, and I have the data here, Customs would have seized 469 firearms and more than 40,000 rounds of ammunition. That's massive. What does that number tell us about the operations of your non-intrusive inspection and just Jamaica Customs on a whole?
I think it tells us more about what JCA is doing, not what a specific branch is doing. And so earlier, I would have stressed the importance of the entire division working together, right, to support the operations and to see the results that we're seeing. But not only are we relying on those very strong internal partnerships, what is important to us is the partnership with other local law enforcement agencies. So we work very closely with the JCF. So the work that we are doing, we could not do alone, right? And so when the JCF, for example, will make releases about these seizures, they do that because there's a very strong partnership that exists. We also are very heavily reliant on our collaborations with our external partners, whether it be our partners up north or as far as partners in Australia and New Zealand. This global network of partnership, we believe, is very important, right? Because those of us in law enforcement will say that those who are involved in transnational organized crime, that their networking is very strong. And so for us to be able to mitigate the effects and to combat those activities, we rely heavily on our partnerships. And that has been important in reaping the successes that we have had. We look at, for example, one of the things that we like to we don't boast about it, right? But we put it out there in terms of, for example, within the agency, the number of WCO, World Customs Organization, accredited experts that we have, right? And even in the era of non-intrusive inspection, we have a WCO certified technical and operational advisor, and that is in the form of me. It doesn't mean that I'm the best that we have at JCA, but it certainly means that those that we have at JCA who are involved in scanning, non-intrusive inspection, are amongst the best in the world. And so we're able to leverage that. So for example, when we look at the modernization, because what we're doing now, we're in the process of continuing that modernization in terms of the scanning program. We have made a lot of advances over the last couple of years, but the work is not done. And that modernization effort is being led by JCA team members. And we just completed the ISO 9001 2015 recertification audit.
Yes.
And one of the things that the auditors pointed...
And that was successful, eh?
Yeah, we were very successful at that. And one of the things that the auditors pointed out in that closing meeting, they commended the organization, for example, with how we approach projects like the NII and other projects, where a lot of entities look outside for consultants and to bring in project teams to manage massive projects. And within the agency, we have been able to be managing a massive project to transform the landscape of Jamaica border protection. And we're extremely proud of that. We're not done yet, right? We've done a lot of work on the seaport, and we're pivoting to the airport because there's another risk area there.
I don't want to touch the airport yet because we're going there. Earlier you mentioned about the global network and how important that is in terms of protecting the border. But what are in terms of data, what's the data saying in terms of where these weapons are coming from?
Data is saying that we have a challenge in Jamaica. And this is just maybe one metric, right? What we are seizing on the ports. But there are others that the JSAF and others will tell you to look at. So we look at our murder rate and the percentage of murders and violent crime that are committed with the use of firearm. And it says that we have a challenge, a serious challenge in this country. And we have had that challenge going back a number of decades, right? But I think what last year says to us, when you look at what has happened in terms of the dramatic reduction in murders, and you look at, for example, the corresponding or the correlated massive increase in firearms and ammunition detection, then one could say that the two things are related, right? So the JCF may say, yes, they have increased their capabilities, which is correct, right? But we also have to be more effective at preventing arms and ammunition from reaching the hands of those who are intent on causing chaos and havoc and terrorizing the Jamaican people. And I think we have done our part in terms of that last year and in previous years in ensuring that we are building a safer Jamaica.
Let's shift gears and go to the airport because we're seeing a lot of travel, a lot of courier companies now are out there. A lot is happening at our ports in terms of by air. But are there plans to further increase non-intrusive inspection operations on the air side when we talk about airport?
There definitely is, and I believe that we have a strong presence now as it relates to air cargo. But we understand the risk that exists in a trading environment where you have increasing numbers of packages, small packages, and we saw a ballooning of that in the COVID and post-COVID period, right? And so you're talking about tens of thousands of packages. And we have to wrestle with that about the ability for those to move efficiently through the borders, but at the same time for us to use risk management and to utilize non-intrusive inspection and to utilize our canines and other things to ensure that we can intercept contraband that is being smuggled. Because we're not naive enough to think that people are just sending cell phones and dresses and other things like that. Because we have had significant detections in air cargo of contraband, including arms and ammunition. We have had significant detection, including in passenger luggage. And so what we are working on now as a part of the modernization program really is to increase our capacity to scan passenger luggage and to scan air cargo. And we have some plans that have been laid out in a modernization master plan, and we are working right now and engaging the stakeholders to see how we can bring those plans to fruition, because we are intent on executing our mandate, as I said earlier, to build a safer Jamaica.
Thank you for that again, Kingsley. Let's talk about missing cargo. It's sometimes a common denominator when we have these discussions, and just generally what comes up in the social media space. What are people misunderstanding about how cargo moves through the port? I feel at times that they're not totally clear. So customs at times bear the brunt of the backlash whenever something goes missing at any of our ports.
I mean, Nikhil, that's a question that I've answered on other occasions, right? But I want to start here with my response to that question. That we care, I believe, as much as an importer does, or the owner of the goods does, about missing items. Because if an item goes missing while it is in a public bonded warehouse, whether air cargo or on the seaport, it concerns us because it indicates a vulnerability. So if it is, somebody can open a barrel while it is in the custody of the warehouse in a customs regulated area and remove food items from that barrel, it means that they also could remove contraband from that barrel, right? And it's a good thing that we scan things before they go into the warehouses. So one of the things that we have been doing and insisting with the operators of these spaces, that their security infrastructure must be robust, that it absolutely minimizes the possibility of any interference with cargo. Because what the law expects is that when cargo is offloaded and placed into a warehouse, that the next step is for that cargo to be presented to customs for inspection. So there are 2 points of inspection. There's a scanning that happens in most instances before the cargo is placed in the warehouse. And then there's a inspection, documentary review, and the secondary inspection that is done before the cargo is released. And that's what the law expects. And so use of CCTV is an important control for us and for the operators of these warehouses. The access control, whether it is electronic access control or the use of security personnel to control access to space. So if you think about a warehouse space where cargo is stored, it's not an open space. It's a restricted space. Even you as an importer can't enter into that restricted space. And so and I've said it before, as a senior customs person, if I go to one of these facilities, I'm just coming from one of those facilities at the airport. And for me to step into the cargo storage area where the scanning machine that is operated by my staff is, I have to show a security guard my ID to gain access. So these are not loose spaces. And I'm not going to tell people that it is not possible for things to go missing. But I'm going to tell them that the probability of that is very, very low. And people must understand the supply chain. Between when you pack that barrel, for example, and a freight forwarder picks it up, there's a lot of things that happens between where it's coming from and when it gets to Jamaica, and many opportunities. And I always say to people, if something goes missing, utilize the channel, make a report to your freight forwarder, and your freight forwarder work with the warehouse and get customs intervention if it is required to investigate what may have happened. And if it can be proven that something happened to your cargo while it is in the custody of the warehouse, then the warehouse has an obligation to make amends to you. And certainly it is something that would interest customs in terms of possible sanctions where the law allows for such interference with cargo before it is presented to customs.
Thank you, Kingsley. Very comprehensive with that. I think you would have issued a lot of clarity, and also how to seek redress in instances where there's missing cargo. I want to now move to public trust and confidence. As someone who fairly new to customs, I'd say that I've seen an increase or an improvement in the public's trust and confidence in Jamaica Customs. So much to say that Prime Minister Andrew Holness would have praised Customs for its enforcement work. What does this recognition would mean to some of those officers?
Well, I want to answer the question two ways. So you asked about the recognition, but you also asked about the issue of public trust. And I think we suffer from the fact that we are a government institution, and we live in a society where people are generally skeptical of government and the institutions and the machineries associated with government. And so customs can't escape that, right? But for someone who has been a part of this organization for a little over 20 years, I would say to the Jamaican people that we have to learn to be proud of our institutions, especially when those institutions can measure up against the best in the world. And being proud of those institutions like Jamaica Customs doesn't mean that the institutions are perfect, right? But it means that you recognize the work that is being done to create an institution that is focused on serving the Jamaican people. And it is no coincidence that the first value in our core values, which is CAPIT, is customer focus. And I know every single day that the management team and the officers at Jamaica Customs are focused on that. Do we always get it right? No. But there are mechanisms in place. And for example, when we sought out the ISO 9001 2015 certification, it wasn't to serve a selfish purpose. It was to ensure that our system was focused on quality management so that we can better serve the Jamaican people. And I'm going to say, when you look at that certification, when you look at where we have come from, when you look at the massive investments we have made, for example, in border protection technologies, K9, and everything else that is going on, when you look at how this Jamaican institution held up after Hurricane Melissa.
Yeah, that was impressive.
I think that this is an institution that every Jamaican should be proud of. And I say it again, being proud don't mean that you're not critical of the institution. But being proud means that you take ownership, it is ours. And if it is broken and it needs to improve and it needs to be fixed, then you accept it as yours and you accept it as work in progress. As it relates to the Prime Minister commendation from the Prime Minister and any Jamaican is always welcome, and that is something that encourages all of us at JCA. When there's a lot of hits that you get, when you get the commendations, you accept them gracefully and you move on the next minute and the next day to continue the work.
Thank you, Kingsley. And there you have it. Behind every seizure statistic is something bigger. Every illegal firearm intercepted is potentially a crime prevented. I'm Nikel Innerarity, and thanks for tuning in to Real Talk with Jamaica Customs.